What's up guys, Eric here, Florida High Performance. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. You may recognize this car behind me. It's a 2020 Corvette C8 that we did a bunch of modifications to. You can watch that video and check out exactly what we did on this channel. Just click the link. Customer got a little bit used to the power that we gave him and he's upped the ante. This time the car is in for a Peitz Performance twin turbo system, a built motor from late model engines, methanol injection from Pro Meth, and a bunch of controllers that are gonna make this C8 run like stock, despite giving it, I don't know, another 200, 300 horsepower. Super excited about it. I'm getting ready to do some dyno testing on this car. That way we have good baseline test and data, and then we can compare that to the results that we get. We're gonna shoot this series in a few different episodes. It's gonna show you the installation process, the products that we use, talk a little bit about the parts, and really give you a good idea of what it's like to twin turbo a C8. Not many of these cars have been twin turbo. There are a handful out there. They're all running really well. Florida High Performance is gonna be right up there with them. And we're super excited to show you guys the journey and what it takes. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you're updated when we drop new episodes on this car. And that's it. So let's go ahead and get to that baseline testing and see exactly what the C8 does. And man, we look forward to showing you what it takes to twin turbo a C8 Corvette. If you guys are testing a C8 on a dyno, you kind of have to strap it down and run it for about 10-15 minutes at about 20 miles an hour to get all these lights and all these ABS and traction and all that, to get all that stuff to turn off to be able to do a full pull. So just a little tip. A lot of guys don't know that. So that's really all it is. Just drive it enough that all the lights go off. So all right, here we go. Last baseline test. Let's see what this thing does. Thing in Z mode. Alrighty, see what we got. Turn that bad boy off. Let's see what we did. Hey guys, welcome back. That concludes the baseline testing on the C8. We were able to get 458 real horsepower and 448 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you recall in the previous video that you can view on our YouTube channel, we installed a set of headers, cat elite pipes, a Corsa exhaust, and a carbon fiber intake manifold from Lingenfelter. So it's a pretty good baseline considering the modifications this car has and the fact that it's not tuned at all. Those were simply just bolted onto the car and we did a wide open throttle pull. So now that we have our baseline information, we can start modifying the car. First things first, I'm gonna start pulling the top of the motor off, the intake manifold, things like that. And then ultimately what we're gonna wind up doing is dropping the motor and the transmission out from the bottom of the car. Separate the two. We have to send the clutch pack out to Datsun Motorsports to have them upgrade the clutches. We're gonna take the motor out of the car, put the new short block in, and so on. So a lot of work, an extensive project for sure. It will be challenging, but in the end, it'll be great. And this car is gonna make a ton of power. So again, stay tuned, and we look forward to getting this thing done. Hey guys, welcome back. Eric here, Florida High Performance. It's day one on our C8 twin turbo project. I want to talk real briefly about safety. If you're putting a C8 on a lift, make sure you're using the appropriate jacking points or lifting points that are under the chassis. We've all seen the videos floating around of some of these cars literally being split in half or falling off of the lift. Lifting, very, very important that it's put on the two posts correctly. Okay, so again, using the proper jacking or lifting points in this case. I also use the lifting pucks underneath, okay? So I use the pucks underneath that separate the pad of the lift arm from the chassis. I'm clear of the skirts on both ends. And then of course, before I do my final lift, I always like to give it the shake test, kind of move the car around, make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. This car is secure. Keep in mind, we'll be pulling the motor and transmission out of this thing. So guys, just be careful with this kind of stuff. You're putting a car on a lift, take your time. It took me about 20 minutes to load this car on this lift today. Taking my time, didn't damage anything, and now I'm ready to go. I'm gonna start tearing this thing down. start taking the top end of the motor off, taking the rear bumper off, and so on, and start exposing that motor.
We got the rear bumper off, got a bunch of panels off underneath. Again, this is all in preparation to pull this motor and trans out, get the turbos on here. Right now we're gonna pull the Corsa off. There's a Corsa axle back on this car. Kind of undress this, take the carpeting and stuff out of the trunk, and continue on with the teardown, get that motor out as quickly as we can.
All right, guys, so I've done what I could underneath the car to get as much of the hardware and fasteners and other things off to get this Corsa cat back out. I also removed the factory airbox. I took some of the panels and carpeting out of the trunk to be able to gain access to that. I could have technically dropped this entire exhaust with the engine and trans, but when I work in these cars, and when I work on any car, I like to get as many things out of the way as possible. It's just less things to break, less things to be in the way, less things to deal with. So that Corsa is not going back in anyway, so I went ahead and did what I had to do to get to it. I'm gonna take out a few more bolts that are just past the cat delete pipes, and I'll be able to drop the Corsa out, and we will continue to make progress and hopefully have this motor and trans out here very, very soon. Alrighty, so go ahead and remove the Corsa catback exhaust that is out of the car. Now I'm gonna move on to this Lingenfelter Performance Design intake. Now, we have another one of these. It is plumbed for meth. Pro Meth did the direct port meth plumbing for us ahead of time, so we do have another one of these going on. This is a really nice piece. This particular one's going to be coming off. We're not going to use this particular manifold. And as I said, I could leave this on the motor and drop it out, but I'm going to go ahead and take it out. I don't want to damage it. And it's just, again, one less thing that's in my way when I have to start disconnecting the bulkhead fittings and other things to the firewall. So go ahead and remove this and continue. All right, guys, so we are under the C8. We've taken out quite a bit at this point. Now we're gonna do what we've got to do to get this engine and transmission out. So I've removed the tunnel plate, and that's exposed the ECU and some other stuff that's up in there. I'm gonna disconnect some lines. Ultimately, moving the brakes out of the way, and just kind of taking things off and moving things out of the way. The shocks get disconnected from the control arm, or in this case, the sway bar, and keep making progress, take the wheel liners out. We got quite a bit to do. It's gonna be a couple more hours of work, and we'll be able to lower this engine and trans out and get cooking on it. So for those of you that have never actually seen the tunnel of a C8, this is kind of what it looks like when you take this plate out that's here. Got your coolant lines, your AC lines, things like that. This is the actual engine computer, the ECU. It's located in the tunnel. Fuel crossover from tank to tank. So we're gonna have to disconnect all this stuff right up in here. We are gonna have to evacuate this AC system and just start kind of disconnecting things. We're gonna take these braces out. So again, all in preparation to lower this entire rear subframe, engine, and transmission out of the car. So. All right, so now that we got the wheel liner out on both sides, that's gonna expose a lot of what we need to disconnect and take out. Preparation to get this motor and trans out.
Got some control modules here, wiring harness, and some other things. You do not have to disconnect the brake lines. You do not have to basically open the brake system. You can take these off and move them to the side and kind of suspend them up in the car and leave them with the car. So that's nice. We don't have to open the brake system itself. Won't have to bleed the brakes later. We will be taking the emergency brake off, which I'm going to do now. That's pretty simple. It's just two 15mm bolts and then this clip right here. Pretty straightforward process there. You want to get that out of the way. So I'll do that now. This car does have carbon ceramic rotors, so we do want to be careful. You can even cover these up if you want. I'm just going to be careful. I'm not going to hit these rotors. Now, I may protect these rotors when I lower this down and this is hanging out, but at this moment I'm being very careful to work around them, but not a bad idea to cover these. You won't want to damage them or anything like that. So again, it's up to you. I'm not rushing this process. I'm taking my time with it. I'm being very careful. I'm not using any power tools here for the most part, except to take some of the small bolts out and clips and things like that. But when it comes to the big items like this, just nice and easy. You avoid damaging things that way. Two 15mm bolts. Take that off. Just re-brake. All right, so part of the procedure of dropping this cradle is actually getting these, I'll just call them support bars, cross members, beams, whatever you want to call them. We got to get them out. So I basically disconnected my brake lines, any of the little brackets and clips and things over here. You got two 15mm bolts. All right, and I've kind of separated everything away from them, and then obviously taking the large 21mm bolts out here, which is fine. It's still supported by these other large bolts, so it's not gonna hurt anything. And then this will ultimately just slide out. Just kind of have to release everything from it. Like so, and it just comes out, nice and easy. And then what I'll wind up doing is putting all my hardware back through here. So all the 10mm bolts that I took out of the cross member here, or the support bar, I'm gonna put all this stuff back in so I remember where it goes later. And another fuel line here. I like to just disconnect all my lines and everything from these pieces. Like so, using my little pry tool so I don't destroy anything. Just like that, nice and easy. Getting a little bit closer to having this thing out. Next thing I'm gonna do is drain the coolant, the other fluids, disconnect my fuel line, and at that point I'll be pretty much ready to get this down. So getting really, really close. All right, so here I'm gonna disconnect the fuel line. All right, nice and easy. Make sure you have something to catch the fuel, obviously. I just use one of these basic fuel line quick disconnect tools, nothing special. Works great, I've had this thing for years. It's my OG fuel line disconnect tool. Nice and easy, release the pressure. All right, be careful, that line may be pressurized, depending on how long the car's been sitting. All right guys, so what I'm basically doing here is just disconnecting the coolant lines. Got a couple different coolant lines, some down here, some up top, and just draining the coolant out. And ultimately, all of these lines, everything on this side of the cross member will come down with the motor, and everything in the tunnel obviously is gonna stay in the tunnel. And that's all I'm doing, kind of separating it all and making progress. All right guys, so I've gotten the AC lines disconnected. Obviously I evacuated the system, disconnected the lines. Those are hanging out right here.
I've got a large coolant line here I disconnected, and a smaller coolant line I disconnected. Got this one coolant line left, and it would help, guys, if you had this radiator hose removal tool. This hook helps a lot to get up in here and separate the hose from the actual hard lines, because they're pretty well on there. You've got a worm clamp here. The actual top of the clamp is up high, so that'll be a little tricky to get to, but we'll get that out. And it also helps a lot to have this tool right here. This is what I use to get the clamps off the hoses. It's basically like a grip, like a handle, and then you've got your actual portion of the tool that squeezes the clamp together. So this is a very, very helpful tool. If you're gonna be doing this, especially maybe in your garage or something, you definitely want one of these. All right, guys, so I've got probably 6-7 hours so far into the removal and teardown of anything that's attached to this cradle that is attaching that to the body of the car. I've taken apart, including wiring harness and stuff like that. So this thing's pretty much ready to go. You see it behind me here. I'm getting excited to get ready to drop this motor and trans out. Now, something I want to show you. I will be separating the transmission from the engine to get to the clutch packs. We will be sending those out and having them upgraded. So just a little tip for you guys: if you're gonna drop this cradle down on a table, a bench, a cart, whatever it is, and you will be separating the engine from the transmission, take these bolts out first. You've got some bell housing bolts that kind of go around and hold that together. Take these out. Anything that's gonna be down here, you will not have access to it once it's in the cart or once it's sitting on whatever it is you're lowering down, unless it's jack stands or something like that. But just something to do. So keep in mind, if you're dropping this down, take out and take apart and kind of remove some things if you're gonna need to ahead of time, and it'll make your life a lot easier. So that's it, we're gonna keep moving, and I think the next step's gonna be taking some of the things off from the top of the motor, oil fill, things like that, and we're ready to drop it out. All right, guys, we got the motor and trans out of the C8. Overall, really not too bad. Not something I'd want to do in my garage, on my back. You could though, but overall not too bad. Took me a total of about, taking my time, 6 hours or so. Basically disconnecting your lines from your tunnel, disconnecting most of the harness that's attached to the chassis. We leave our shocks in, we leave our brakes in. I didn't have to disconnect or open the rear brake channel, which is amazing. It saves me a lot of time later. And there you go. So it all really comes out as one large unit. And then from here, I'll be able to tear down what I need to, take the motor out, put the new motor in, get the clutch packs out. Big shout out to the Dubels up in, I think they're up in Stuart, Florida. They make this table that this thing is sitting on. It's an aluminum cart, basically. It can handle a ton of weight, and we had them custom made by the Dubel family for us, so I appreciate you guys. I have their tables and their carts, and that's what this engine and transmission's sitting on. So make sure you have something very sturdy and strong that this can sit on, and you won't have any issues. We also used a strap. I'll probably put another strap on here just for safety so that this doesn't move or slide or anything like that. That's it. Overall, not too bad. Now that I've done it, I could probably do a little faster. But again, this is not something you want to rush on. I never emphasize rushing. I take my time. And as a result, we have very little, if any, issues ever. So at this point, I'm going to start tearing down the exhaust and kind of taking things off so I can separate the engine and the transmission and ship these clutches out to Dodson Motorsports and keep moving. So that's it. We will see you on the flippity flop. All right, guys, so we've got the motor and trans out of the C8. Now I am tasked with tearing it down. I'm gonna start basically at the front, work my way back. And the goal by the end of the day is to have this engine and transmission separated and out of this cradle. I've got a lot of stuff to take off, the headers. I may not take up the cylinder heads, I haven't decided yet. All the front of the motor has to come off, all the accessories. A lot of stuff, wiring harness, things like that. So I'm gonna take my time with it as always. And again, the goal is to have this all apart by the end of today. All right, guys, so I just unboxed the modified clutch pack that I got by way of C8 Performance. Thank you guys very much for the quick turnaround. Dodson Motorsports actually upgrades these things, and it's simple, right? Simple concept. The factory ones aren't strong enough to handle the type of power we're gonna make. We take them out, we send them out, they do their thing, they send them back, and I go ahead and reinstall it. So just got these. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in the transmission today. Now, very important, guys, and this is per General Motors website. New stator shaft, new seal, bolts, gasket, and the bolt that actually retains all this and keeps all this together. So it's a good idea. I mean, you don't have to, you know, it's one of those things. Do I need to? No, but I always replace any of these components. That way when it all goes back in, it's brand new and I don't have any issues. So we're gonna go ahead and get to work. We're gonna get these clutches back in, put all the new hardware and seals and gaskets in, get this new stator shaft in there as well. That's what this clutch pack sits on. And that's it. Pretty excited, man. Getting there. All right, so I have installed the modified clutch packs as well as a new stator shaft, which is this piece here. I technically could have reused this, but GM recommends you replace it. So actually they require that you replace it, but people I've spoken to said they can reuse it. But anyway, I always go ahead and replace per General Motors guideline. So stator shaft was replaced as well as the stator shaft bolts. I did have to remove one of the fluid lines as well as a small sprocket to be able to get all this stuff out. But it's pretty straightforward, pretty basic. Kind of put it all back together the way it came out. So putting the clutch packs in is fairly simple. It's a little tedious. You have to be patient. It's almost like putting a torque converter in. Kind of goes in stages. You have to align the splines and then it kind of falls into place. And then I make sure I can feel behind here that this gear is meshing. There's a gear here meshing with the clutch packs. They're both turning and they're it's free of any binding or any kind of interference or anything like that. So I'm happy with that. And that's it. Clutch packs are in. Time to put the motor back on. Obviously we'll cover this all back up and keep moving. So while we have the engine and transmission and everything out, we also decided to upgrade the axles. Obviously the C8 is going to make a lot of horsepower and torque, and obviously the owner is going to, you know, want to get on the car and really test it and see what it can do. So we thought it'd be a good idea while everything was out to upgrade the axles. These are from Drive Shaft Shop. They're rated at 1400 horsepower. This is the factory axle, rear axle, right? It's from the passenger side of the car. And this is the new axle. Full 300M construction, from the billet CV housing to the hub itself and the shaft and the splines, all 300M, very strong material, as well as the actual shaft itself. So again, they're rated at 1400 horsepower. That's far more than this car will make, and I have no doubt that this will handle any kind of launch or any kind of wide open throttle pulls or any abuse that we're going to throw at this car. So these things are really, really nice. We're going to go ahead and get these installed and keep moving forward. The next step after the axles is start hanging the turbos and everything like that and get that motor back in the car.